This woman filmed her own murder after her husband found out she was having an affair. On December 2021, a fight broke out between 60-year-old Carrie Birmingham and his 48-year-old wife Patricia after he found out that she had been having an affair. During the argument, Carrie pulled out his shotgun, pointed at Patricia, and threatened to take her life. Patricia began recording their fight, and the last thing her husband said to her before he pulled the trigger was that she was going to meet Jesus. Carrie pled guilty, and even though they had video evidence of what he did, he was only sentenced to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole in 5 years. And the reason for this is because the laws in Texas allows for a reduction in punishment if the crime was committed in sudden passion, which in this case, Carrie found out about his wife's affair and quickly reacted in this way.
Serial killer facts that will haunt your nightmares, part 3. Serial killer Robert Pickton would grind up the bodies of his victims in the same processor he used for his pigs, meaning that town locals regularly consumed human meat. Ted Bundy, one of the most infamous killers of all time, worked at a suicide hotline. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't kill or eat people with tattoos because, as he says, it gave the flesh a weird taste. When serial killer Ed Gein was arrested, police searched his home to find a bag of wilted vaginas, a lampshade made out of a human face, and a half-finished woman suit, made entirely out of human skin. Serial killer Robert Hansen abducted his victims and flew them to an isolated cabin in the Alaskan mountains. He then released them into the forest and hunted them with a knife and rifle.
The infamous case of the woman that cut off her husband's manhood. When Lorena married John Bobbitt, she thought that it was going to be happily ever after. But in reality, John started hurting Lorena the second they tied the knot, physically, emotionally, and then he started essaying her. This guy was a huge a-hole. Unemployed while his wife worked 2 jobs, forced Lorena to end a pregnancy that she wanted to keep, cheating on her. On top of all of that, he would go out, get super drunk every night, then come home and essay Lorena. Then one night in June of 1993, after John essayed his wife and passed out drunk, his wife Lorena went to the kitchen to get herself a glass of water, where a large cutting instrument was in plain view, which Lorena took back into her bedroom and cut off John's member. She then got in her car and left and threw it out the car window, but somehow they were able to find it in time and reattach it after a 9-hour surgery. There was actually 2 trials in this story, one for what Lorena did to John and one for what John did to Lorena, and they were actually both found not guilty. They obviously divorced and went on to live very different lives. Today, Lorena is a wife and mother, and also the founder of her own foundation against domestic violence. After the incident, John went on to star in some adult movies. Today, he's unemployed and has been married and divorced 3 times. And just last week, he publicly announced that after drinking contaminated water, he had to have all 10 of his toes recently amputated, which doctors were unable to reattach.
Imagine finding out that your friend was keeping a very big secret from you. Stolen Baby, the murder of Heidi Brard, tells a story about Heidi Brard and her best friend Megan Faramuska, who share with each other that they are pregnant at the same time. Only one problem: Megan isn't actually pregnant and she has some sinister plans of her own. I'm partnering with Lifetime's Rip from the Headlines to get you excited about their true crime films. To find out what happens next, you can check out Stolen Baby, the murder of Heidi Brard for free for the whole month of April at mylifetime.com/watchripped.
A high school football star who took his own life after falling victim to a sextortion scam is finally seeing justice. Nigerian brothers Samuel and Samson Ogoshi posed as a woman on Instagram and tricked 17-year-old Jordan DeMay into sending them intimate photos. They demanded the teen send them $1,000, threatening to share the pictures with his friends and family if he didn't pay up. 6 hours later, DeMay was found dead. His last message was, "I'm killing myself right now because of you." Now the scammers have pleaded guilty to conspiring to exploit teenage boys.
5 people have been found deceased, including at least 2 children, inside a Yukon, Oklahoma home after a wellness check call was made. New information is coming in rapidly as this is a breaking and developing story. 5 people have been found in a manner that is described by officials as a violent end in the Check Hall Estates neighborhood in Yukon, Oklahoma. Police have stated that all the injuries are consistent with homicide. The home belonging to Jonathan and Lindsay Candy and their 4 sons, Dylan, Lucas, Ethan, and Noah. While it is still an active crime scene and the details surrounding the victims have not been released, Mustang High School put out a statement confirming that a recent graduate and a current 9th grader were among the victims, as well as a 6th grader from Meadowbrook Intermediate, the local middle school. Another outlet has mentioned that a 10-year-old is who found the victims. Drawing a conclusion from this information, I'm speculating that among the deceased would be Dylan, the recent graduate, Ethan, the 9th grader, and Lucas, the 6th grader, and potentially the 2 parents, Lindsay and Jonathan. Leaving Noah, the 10-year-old, to be the one that found them all around 9:30 this morning. I will keep you updated as this continues to develop.
This Ring camera captured the chilling moment 21-year-old Emmanuel Espinosa knocked on his mother's front door and waited until she came out before viciously stabbing her to death. Emmanuel, also known as Manny, explains that he loved his mother and had a good relationship with her, but that he had been wanting to take her life for a very long time until one day he actually went through with it. People who knew Manny described him as a sweet and quiet person and are in complete disbelief that he did such a horrific thing. So what exactly made Manny snap all of a sudden?
So some major breaking news with the case involving the suspect out of Washington, Eliza Hazard, man that abducted his child and took the lives of 2 women. They have found the 1-year-old boy safe, thank goodness. Now for the suspect, it is said that he took his life. The whole situation happened in Oregon, but we will never know why this man decided to take the life of his ex-wife and a minor that he had a child with for no reason. There was no reason for it. But all I am glad is that this little boy is safe. Unfortunately, his mom's life was taken. I really hope there are family members that are able to take custody of him. The last thing I want is for him to go in the system. Again, the 1-year-old has been found safe, and the man behind all of this chaos unalived himself. Other than that, I will keep you guys updated with any new information. And as always, let me know what you guys think in the comments. And also please pray for 1-year-old Roman. He needs all of the prayers you guys can possibly send him. Alright, thank you.
The man smiling in this photo was arrested after hunting down and brutalizing pedophiles, earning him the nickname, the Alaskan Avenger. As a kid, Jason Vukovich was sexually and physically abused by his stepfather Larry until he ran away from home at the age of 16. Larry was charged with the abuse of a minor but never served any jail time, and as the years passed, Jason grew haunted by his stepfather. He reached a breaking point in 2016 when he decided to use his state sex offender registry to track down criminals, break into their homes, and beat them with a hammer. In 2018, Jason was sentenced to 28 years in prison and has since come out apologizing for his actions. He says that vigilantes have no place in society and warns that just because your past was taken from you, you shouldn't ruin the future that you have ahead.
She left her children at home while she went on a cruise. This is 29-year-old Lakeisha Woods Williams, and she is a mother of 2 from Houston, Texas. On April 4th of this year, Lakeisha left her apartment with several suitcases. She left behind her 8-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter in that apartment. Lakeisha planned to be gone for 5 days while both of those children were home alone. Several concerned neighbors reported this to the police on April 9th. Neighbors stated that they had saw Lakeisha leave with luggages on April 4th around noon and never returned. They also stated that this is not the first time that she's done this. Police immediately showed up at the apartment to do a welfare check. Once inside, they noticed the children home alone in unhealthy conditions. According to court documents, the apartment was in complete disarray. There was leftover food and garbage everywhere. In addition, there was a strong smell of urine just lingering. Police also discovered a camera in the apartment, and Lakeisha was using that to communicate with her children while she was on her cruise ship. The oldest child also had a cell phone that he was using to communicate with his mom. Authorities kept trying to contact Lakeisha, but she was not cooperating and she kept changing her whereabouts. Authorities accused Lakeisha of abandoning a child with the intent of returning. Her bail was set at $25,000. The children ended up being released to the custody of their aunt. Lakeisha has stated that she had paid her cousin to watch her children, but he ran off with the money, but I don't know how true that is. Crystal Candelario did the same thing with her 16-month-old daughter. She left her while she went on vacation, and unfortunately her little girl died. These types of situations are happening way too often now.
Breaking news, a man has taken the life of 3 of his children and his wife. Authorities say the horrific incident occurred sometime before 9:30 a.m. on Monday morning. Authorities say it all began when they received a 911 call from inside of the home from one of the children who was not deceased, saying, quote, everyone inside of the home appeared to be deceased. Authorities confirmed when they arrived on the scene, everyone except for the child who placed the phone call was, quote, beyond saving. Officials said that the father, quote, became involved in an altercation with his wife, Lindsay. This was before arming himself and taking her life. Authorities said he then systematically went through the home, taking the life of 3 of 4 of his children. The children's ages were 12, 14, and 18 years old. Authorities described it as he, quote, hunted down his children. The surviving child, quote, apparently had been asleep during his father's rampage. He woke up and had discovered what happened. Authorities said, quote, there is no indication he didn't sleep through it. They said the child that was unharmed had a box fan in his room creating a lot of noise. They confirmed that the body of the mother and one of the children were found downstairs, while the other 2 children were found upstairs. One of the children was found in their bed. Authorities also confirmed that the couple had no history of DV. Officials say they do not know why the child who was able to place the phone call was left unharmed. They also continued by saying that question will most likely never be answered. The surviving boy is now with his relatives. To stay up to date on this case, make sure you click the playlist below. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
This man from Stevenage used his position as a police officer to get away with unspeakable crimes. It was October 2021 in Hertfordshire. David Carrick, originally from Wiltshire, was a Metropolitan Police officer. He was taken in for questioning after being arrested himself this time for a serious allegation. A woman came forward to say that the pair had met on a dating app and he'd then arred her. She told police that he tried to get her drunk and then arred her in a hotel room. Now, this obviously gained media attention, and over the months that followed, David's face was on news channels and he started getting recognised. This was the catalyst that enabled more brave victims to come forward. Suddenly, many stories were being rang in about David's horrific abuse of multiple victims. The crime spanned over a staggering 17 years. The victims were from multiple different areas, and police were stunned by how similar their stories were. David had clearly been incredibly manipulative and controlling. He'd been a police officer for over 20 years. Obviously, with his position came a lot of power and the ability to abuse that power. Victims stated that he used his job in order to intimidate them and state that they wouldn't be believed. He convinced the women that they wouldn't be taken seriously if they reported the crimes. Now, David shockingly had been reported a total of 9 times. Infuriatingly, none of the complaints resulted in any charges. He was allowed to continue to have access to really vulnerable people in his job as a police officer. Now, luckily, as this all started to snowball, some of the victims had some text messages off him. They were able to use these as evidence. Horrifically, multiple victims had harrowing stories of being locked in cupboards and being urinated on by David. He eventually pleaded guilty to 49 charges against 12 women. Some of the charges covered multiple incidents and a total of 85 offences, including 48 Rs. He was given 36 life sentences and will serve more than 30 years in prison.
However, after Gabriel's death, both Pearl and Isaro were charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances of torture, and prosecutors sought the death penalty. On February 15, 2018, Pearl pled guilty as part of a deal to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. During the trial, she said, "I want to say I'm sorry for what happened. I wish Gabriel was alive. Every day I wish I made better choices. I wish the best for my children. Izaro did not plead guilty to first-degree murder with special circumstances of torture, and his case went to trial, prosecuted by Deputy District Attorneys Jonathan Hatami and Scott Yang. In September 2017, jury selection began. Potential jurors were given questionnaires and informed that the trial could last up to 6 weeks and involved severe internal and external injuries to the victim. The jury consisted of 7 women and 5 men. The trials and the subsequent reforms highlight both the severity of the abuse Gabriel suffered and the systemic failures that allowed such tragedies to occur. As the trial commenced, the jury was presented with detailed information about the severe abuse Gabriel had endured in the months leading to his death. Prosecutor John Hatami described Izaro as pure evil and argued that he deserved the death penalty. In contrast, Isaro's defense attorney John Allen portrayed him as kind-hearted and compassionate. During the trial, Gabriel's cousin Emily shared that the horrific photos of Gabriel's abuse were so disturbing that she almost had to leave the room. Izaro's defense team attempted to shift the primary responsibility onto Pearl. One of Izaro's lawyers, Michael, criticized Pearl and argued that she should bear the major responsibility for the events leading to Gabriel's death. However, Pearl's attorney similarly emphasized her role, creating a situation of mutual blame. Nonetheless, the judge concurred that Izaro was a principal participant in the abuse and almost certainly the mastermind, leaving no doubt that he had committed murder. The jury deliberations began on November 14, 2017, and a verdict was reached the next day. Ultimately, the jury convicted Izaro of first-degree murder and torture. On December 11, 2017, they began deliberating the sentencing phase. The next day, the jury was deadlocked, but on December 13th, they returned a death sentence, which was accepted by Judge George G. Lomeli. The trials of Gabriel...
This woman created such disturbing videos that she was sentenced to 50 years in prison. This story is truly one of the worst things that I've ever covered here on TikTok, so if you have a weak stomach or you can't hear about animal cruelty, please keep scrolling. So this is Ashley Richards from Houston, Texas. In 2015, she pleaded guilty to 4 counts of producing and 1 count of distributing these disturbing videos. And once again, I'm going to warn you, you can keep scrolling at any time before we get into these details. So this all started in 2012 when PETA, or the group known as People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, contacted the Houston police about a video they had found online. This film was titled Ebony Kill Cat, and it depicted extremely sadistic and cruel acts being forced upon a kitten. So the police got into contact with the people from PETA, and they then sent them 20 additional videos. These videos depicted the sadistic torture of various animals, including kittens, a fish, pigeon, crayfish, mice, a rabbit, all being tortured with different things like high heels, knives, screwdrivers, and pliers. In the videos, the woman that appeared in them was wearing a Mardi Gras style mask, and she would talk suggestively to the people watching this torture. Yes, that meant that there were paying customers out there that were paying this woman to produce these absolutely horrific videos. I cannot share the details of some of these videos. You can actually find the information online through news articles, but I mean, I think I changed as a person after reading these articles. Eventually, though, the police were able to track Ashley's IP address, which led them to her suburban home in Houston. This is an example of one of the messages she shared with the client. I mean, just, ugh. That led them to Brent Justice and Ashley Richards. These were the 2 that were producing these videos and selling them on a website online. And Congress had recently passed a bill making this specific type of video material, otherwise known as crush, illegal. So thankfully they were arrested. Shockingly though, Brent Justice, after the trial, he was actually sentenced to 50 years in prison. Shockingly though, Ashley, the woman who actually carried out these acts on camera, was only sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, personally, this is one of the most disturbing things I've ever read about, and I definitely think she should have been in prison for a lot longer, but that's the justice system.
the evil 13-year-old that unalived his own baby sister. Charity was the single mom to 2 kids, her oldest being Paris, who was really creative, really helpful, really smart. He was actually confirmed to be a genius. Everyone truly believed that Paris loved his baby sister Ella, which is why they were all shocked with what Paris did next. Charity was working late, so she called a babysitter to watch 13-year-old Paris and 4-year-old Ella. But around 10 p.m., Paris was able to convince the babysitter to leave. That's when 13-year-old Paris essayed and brutally unalived his 4-year-old sister, Ella. Paris then called a friend from school and talked to them for about 6 minutes before he called 911. I couldn't even imagine being Charity in this situation, like finding out your one child is now gone forever, and your other child is being arrested for it. And it's not even like this was an accident. This was something that Paris had planned. Paris is a master manipulator. While in police custody, Paris was diagnosed with being both a psychopath and a narcissist. Paris had been wearing a mask his entire life. He literally laughed in his mother's face when she was crying, begging him, like, why did you do this? Something that his stories always change, like the motive behind it. But yeah, she's crying in front of him and he just goes, no one's ever known the real me. Paris has refused to be reevaluated, and he's also done like quite a few TV specials, TV appearances, where he claims that he actually does have empathy, he's not a psychopath, and he's a changed person. For years and years and years, until very recently, Paris and Ella's mom, Charity, would still visit Paris behind bars, support him, love him, because she hated what he did, but she still had unconditional love for her son Paris. Opinions have always been super split about her decision to still love and support her son, so let me know what you guys think about that. All experts that have looked at this case believe that Paris is unable to be rehabilitated, and when he is released, he's going to be a threat to society. And I said when Paris is released because due to juvenile laws in Texas, one day Paris will be released. Paris will be up for parole as early as 2027. But if Paris is never granted parole, he will be released in February of 2047.
We're on, baby. Welcome!
This is Pretty Little Liars True Crime.
I'm Lindsay Shaw.
I'm Tammin Sursok.
And we have come together to rewatch PLL. Yes, you heard that right.
We are going to break down all the episodes of Pretty Little Liars. We're going to rewatch them together and go through all the gossip. Things that you've never even heard before.
Absolutely. Behind the scenes gossip. I want to know who everybody was making out with.
Did you ever date anyone on the show that we don't know about?
The beefs that we had.
That we hated each other.
Yeah, absolutely. You got me sweating already.
And we're going to have some amazing guests. And we also have a true crime element at the end of every single show where we have a real-life death investigator, Joseph Scott Morgan, who's going to really go through the forensics of each episode.
Anytime you walk onto a death scene, you're seeing something that no one else has ever seen before.
And really break down what would it be like if this story was in real life today.
And help us get away with homicide.
Okay. Anyway, listen and watch the show and follow us on
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
And we can't wait to bring you episodes every single week.
Join us every Monday.
Starting April 29th.
See you later, bitches.
This man was eaten alive by bugs, and whatever you do, don't look up the pictures. The case I'm about to explain takes place in the United States on September 12th, 2022. LaShawn Thompson was a 35-year-old man who lived in Georgia, and on July 12, 2022, LaShawn was arrested for a misdemeanor battery charge and he was held in a pre-trial detention. Since he couldn't afford his bail, they then realized LaShawn was suffering from multiple mental health issues, so he was placed in the psychiatric wing of the Fulton County Jail. His family was not informed and had no idea he was being held in this place. During his stay at the prison, LaShawn's mental and physical health began to decline. This was reported by the staff, and the superiors in the prison got this information but did nothing at all to help LaShawn. On the 13th of September, the staff entered LaShawn's cell, and when they entered, they found LaShawn with his eyes opened, covered in bugs, and he was completely unresponsive. The first staff member who found him refused to do CPR on him, and this staff member would later say, she was too freaked out to help in any way. Many other staff members would try to resuscitate him, but their efforts failed. LaShawn was pronounced dead shortly after this, and his body was in a terrible state. There has been images of LaShawn's face released after he died. I can't show the pictures for obvious reasons, but his family did want the public to see his face, along with the pictures of his cell. They wanted everybody to know the horrible conditions they kept him in. So if you want to see the image of LaShawn, you can easily find it. I do warn you though about the picture because it is very disturbing. You can see insects all over his face, in his nose, eyes, and even inside of his mouth. The autopsy report also says that his cell was in terrible condition, with insect infestation and other filthiness around him, as you can see in the photo. The report continues by saying his entire body was infested with a large number of small insects. LaShawn had thousands of bites all over his body and he was covered in his own feces. The picture of LaShawn's cell looks so disgusting and dirty, you can assume it was abandoned. The correction officer who wrote up the report said that he raised concerns about the living conditions he was kept in, and also the decline of his physical and mental health over the 3-month period. These concerns were raised a number of times, but it appears none of the senior staff took any of these concerns seriously, nor did they seem to care about his well-being and left him to die slowly. The photos of LaShawn are some of the most disturbing and sickening ones I've ever seen. If you do decide to look at the pictures of his body, look closely at the defibrillator pads. You'll see bedbugs still swarming and trying to climb up on them. Additionally, the small white spots are lice. For 3 months, this poor guy LaShawn was covered head to toe with bugs, and it was so bad that not only did it cause anemia, but they also ended up burying inside of his skin. This is literally modern day scaphism. This case is absolutely awful, and I can't believe this happened to LaShawn. May he rest in peace.